Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I'm thrilled to have you here on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. And I want to wish everybody a really happy new year and that it should be a great new beginning for wonderful things to come. Although we may be fairly general in our discussion, I do want to encourage everybody to call in, to hear from you. Make it more relevant and personal. You've got some great experts that join the show and they can give you wonderful insights. So please, you can call in. You can reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. Or you can post your comments and questions on Facebook, YouTube, or any of the other platforms that you might be listening to this. I want to give a quick public service announcement. The tax season in the US is going to open in just a few weeks. It's usually the last week of the year. But in between now and then, you'll start receiving forms from different companies like your W-2, the bank, your mortgage company, and others are going to be sending you 1099s, 1098s, and all the other numbers that come on these forms. What I'm going to ask you to do is please look out for them, create a file, be organized. It is a tremendous help to your tax profession. And from experience, I can tell you, the more organized my clients are, the quicker I can turn around their tax returns. Anyone who's listened to me in general will know, or has worked with me, that I'm a huge, huge proponent of somebody who prepares and educates themselves. I think knowing your priorities, your rights, your responsibilities, building the right team for yourself is going to optimize your outcomes. And this is very important, not just in divorce or finance, but your whole life. With a new year comes new beginnings, and overall, January is the month with more divorce filings than any other month. Divorce is an all-inclusive thing that encompasses and impacts your entire life, your legal, your financial, your emotional, and within the process, there are areas of expertise that you want to draw on. So what better way to learn about all of this than to attend Divorce University? And if you're wondering, Divorce University, if you've never heard of such a thing, you'll be really shocked to know that the Lilac tree has put on dozens of these. In fact, this one is going to be the 40th Divorce University in just a few weeks. And before we get into the Lilac tree and Divorce University, I do want to remind everybody that a divorce is a very personal and unique process and event for everybody. Every state has their own rules, and most likely everyone contemplating or in the process will benefit from Divorce University's resources and the array of speakers. And we'll get into all of this, but the one thing I do want to say, which is I think very exciting, is last year Divorce University went online. And so even though you need to put it into perspective of your divorce and where you live, this resource is available for anyone, anywhere. Today, we have Lorraine Murphy, the executive director of the Lilac Tree, who's joining me to talk about building your team, things to think about, Divorce University, and getting educated. Lorraine, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Hirsch. I'm very excited to be here, especially at the beginning of the new year. New things happen in the new year, so very excited. Thank you.
Yes, there is a lot, and I can tell you, having worked with you, there's a lot that's gone into Divorce University. I feel sometimes that I need to sleep a little extra just for you because you don't need to sleep. So, but before we get into Divorce University, I do, as I said, I want to speak about a couple other things. One of them is once a decision is made for a divorce, and it's not always your decision, it could be your spouse's decision. There's quite a bit that needs to be done. I'm going to ask you, as we said, the more you plan, the better it is. But in your opinion, what are some of the things that people should be thinking about or doing before they step into that negotiation or going to a courtroom?
Yeah, I mean, I think courtroom is very far away in the process.
Yes.
And even negotiation. I think one of the things that sort of goes with divorce of any kind, whether amicable or not amicable, or your choice or not your choice, is also a separation. There's a piece of separating in the beginning that's emotional, maybe physical, financial. There's some pieces of that happen beforehand. But you really have to prepare yourself in all different kinds of ways. And you want to make sure, depending on your situation, that you're doing the right things. And that's why sort of having, and I know you're probably going to ask me about building a team, because that's something I always talk about, right?
Right.
Is that, when you're contemplating, the average person, when you're contemplating, and there's not what I call a very specific exit strategy. Okay, so there's not sort of an exit event. There's not
Right.
an affair, or there's not an addiction, or there's not some big event. And there's more just been a growing apart, or a different, living different lives. And the love has changed.
Yeah.
That averagely takes people 5 to 7 years to contemplate. So that's a long time, really.
It's a very long time.
Whether you have kids or not is what they say. So it isn't just a sort of, you wake up on New Year's Day and decide, that's it, I'm getting a divorce. It doesn't really happen that way. So, and the way I use the phrase we use here at Lilac Tree is, divorce is not a marathon, right? So, or it is a marathon. So you don't just sort of wake up one morning and run a marathon. You prep, you plan, and it's got all different pieces. There's a physical element, an emotional element, a planning element, and it's the same with divorce. You sort of have to plan your pieces slowly and carefully, and really make sure that you are ready to move forward with any process of any kind. And that includes even hiring attorneys or professionals, any kind of mediator or collaborative attorney, any kind of divorce professional that you might need. You need to be ready to even go interview them. So that is sort of, there are lots of, I know that this show is national. So Lilac Tree is based in Illinois. We serve mostly people in Illinois. We do serve some people outside of Illinois, but we run a program called an information session, which is where you can kind of come and talk about the overview of what's going on for you and what you need to do and not do. One of the biggest myths I think we should sort of just myth bust right away, Hirsch, is people think when I've made the decision, I'm going to get divorced, I should go hire an attorney. I wish people didn't do that. I just wish people didn't do that, because usually they hire the wrong person. They haven't told their partner or spouse. And at the end of the day, I always tell people this, whether, if you have children, you're still going to be co-parenting after divorce. If you don't have children, you still have family and friends that are connected, and it sets the tone for your process, how you begin. So how you begin the process really sets the tone for the whole thing.
I love that. I want to reiterate a few things. One is, a lot of people, as you said, will just go out and they get an attorney, or they ask a friend, like, who's a good attorney? And it's very personal, right? You really need to understand. Maybe, you've never done the finances in your life. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's something you need to get educated on, or knowing that this is going to be not as you said, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Let me prepare emotionally, start to see somebody on that side. And as you said, it takes years sometimes for somebody to contemplate before they make that decision. I've heard often people say, oh, it was over before the end of my marriage. And, they really referring to the marriage was over, just was legally still a marriage kind of thing, Right. And I think, I've said this on my show a million times, emotions can be the most expensive part of your divorce. People need to be careful on that. And the other thing is they always compare themselves to somebody else, and they say, oh, well, I'm living next to somebody. They got the same house, the same amount of kids, the same, car we drive, whatever. But your divorce can be 100% different in the way it goes, in the outcome, in your priorities and everything else. So I love what you've just said about really tapping into somewhere that is more objective, that can help you identify the things that you need to look at even before. And then when the time is right, we're not saying obviously that the attorney doesn't have a role. They have a very vital role.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
At the right time, start to engage the right people.
Yes.
And I like that a lot.
Absolutely.
And we've spoken, a lot offline, but, obviously we've just touched on there's an emotional, there's a legal, there's a financial well-being component. All of these come in. So I'm going to ask if you can share, just to tack on to this discussion, a little bit of how the Lilac tree helps people to do some of these things, because I think it's important to go where somebody, they call in and they'll speak to Lauren, or, Lauren's one of the people who work there, we know.
Right, our amazing client coordinator, yes.
Lauren speaks to literally hundreds of people a year. So she kind of knows how to guide people, as opposed to somebody who got divorced and might be still a little bitter, not over it, whatever. There's a very big difference in speaking to those kind of people. So I'm going to ask you to tack on and just share a little bit of...
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I think that's the thing. Lilac Tree, it's really about helping you through any stage of the process, whatever that stage is for you. So what you just said was perfect, Hirsch, that sort of, I always tell people, your marriage is unique. Nobody else knows what goes on inside of your marriage, not your family, not your friends, behind closed doors. Only you and your partner or spouse know what is going on in there. And that means that your marriage is unique, your relationship is unique, therefore your separation and your divorce are unique. So there's no way to put a cookie cutter process on it. And you have to honor that a little bit. I think that's always really hard. But Lilac Tree sort of helps from any stage, wherever you are. So you can come to us at any stage. So from contemplating, in the process, or as we like to call it, in the mud, and then also post-decree, because sometimes, post-decree has its own pieces too that go on in there. And so our goal is not to tell you what to do. We don't have lawyers on staff. What we do is really try to build your resiliency for the process. We try to educate you, inform you, support you, really try to give you the access to the pieces of information and the knowledge that you need in order to kind of move forward for yourself and figure out what steps are important to you and what you need to do. So we really focused on sort of really putting you and empowering your peace of mind as you go through, because the key is you're going to be making some very difficult decisions.
Right.
And these decisions have a lot of weight to them. They're emotional, and principle is very expensive, right? Hirsch, you know that already. You have to be careful in the process of not getting hung up on so many things. Divorce is about loss. There's no winner in divorce. It's loss.
Correct.
And you both have to give up something. You both have to feel a little bit like you're losing something in order to make it happen. But not everyone is able to have a very amicable process. Some people are, that's great. Some are not. And if you're not, then you need a different kind of team. And so we do information sessions where you can meet with one of our divorce counselors. It's not counseling, but it's informational. And it's really like an introduction, Divorce 101, I call it. And it really is individualized to you, to whatever you need at the time. And we can help you figure out what kind of professionals you might need to understand some of the basic laws, to kind of help you set some of your goals. You don't want to be going to interview professionals when you don't have your goals in mind and a clarity of what you need and what you want. And so we do information sessions. We also do a lot of online classes. We do some live classes, the virtual live classes. Like you mentioned, the Divorce University Conference will be coming up. We also do support groups as well. All of our programs are virtual and online. We found that during COVID, our clients really loved that access being virtual, and so we're keeping it. So we do some live webinars and some live workshops as well on different topics. And we cover all the different topics: financial, legal, emotional, and some topics have all of those pieces wrapped into one.
So I think it's important. There's a couple things I've got to add on here. One is, as you said, some of them are wrapped up in one. You can't compartmentalize the financial side to the emotional side to whatever else. They impact each other, right? So understanding how that plays, and sometimes you'll be walking down the street, you find, and then you cross the street and you're crying and you don't know why, and it's these things all happen during divorce, and it doesn't mean anything's wrong. But a couple of things I want to add. I wrote down here. One is your priorities, or as you call them, goals, or
priority.
knowing your priorities, knowing what really you want at the end of this, and being realistic about that is incredibly important. Having people help you do that sometimes, because you're not sure even sometimes how to do that, whether it's because you're not sure of the process or exactly what to look at, but it could be the emotions impacting that. Another one that you mentioned, which I find far too often is missed. People sign that document, they call it a marital settlement agreement, dissolution agreement. There's multiple names depending what state you're in.
Right.
And they think they're done, but you really are not. You know, your divorce, I always say, is not the last chapter in that book. It's the first chapter in the next book. You're setting yourself up, and there are things that have to be done, whether it's now you got to file your taxes, or you're going to update your will and your estate plan.
Right.
In the MSA, in that dissolution agreement, there are things that have to be carried out, whether it's transferring funds, refinancing a house, whatever it might be. There are things that have to still be done. And so people need to be aware of that. And sometimes having that objective view, somebody saying that to them, you know, one of the things I do for some of my clients that aren't as organized because of their emotions, I take that 25, 30-page MSA, that document, that dissolution agreement, and I literally create a checklist for them. And it says, by this date, this is what you have to do, by this date. And they can, it's a much more organized manner for them to go through. But it's so important to understand that this is the beginning of your life, moving forward with your life. And the one other thing I got to add on this is that how you behave now impacts the rest of your life. And I think you were alluding to this a lot when you said about parenting, things like that. You know, if you're a jerk now, but now suddenly need a favor in 6 months from now, there's a little bit of a bad taste left in that person's mouth, right? They're not so happy to just give and give and give. So be aware of all of this. I think all of these are very, very important pieces. So.
And very much, I think one of the big things I would like to sort of tell your listeners is, when you are in the very beginning of thinking of separating or thinking of making the decision to divorce, you may be the person deciding. You may not have talked to your partner. You may be the one who's making the decision, or you could be the partner who's finding out that there's no chance to reconcile. There's no chance to fix anything. This is happening. In those early days, there is so much ramped up hurt and guilt and grief and loss, and it can create panic. And that is what I want. I always tell people, slow down. So if you're the one who is sort of making the decision, understand that your partner or spouse might be surprised. You might be surprised they're surprised, but they might be surprised. Give them a little space, give them a little compassion. Try to step back to where you were when you first got together or got married. Try to remember that this is someone you married, right? This is someone you maybe you had children with. This is the mother or father of your children. Okay, so yes, you may want to separate. Yes, you may want to divorce, but no matter what hurt is going on, you must try to do it with as much honor as you possibly can. It will be better for you. It will be better for your children, better for everyone involved.
I love that. And, you know, a part of that, I think, playing in is, you said better for your children. If there's ever a time to try to role model the right way to face adversity, this is it. You can go through a divorce that can be, you know, some are 6 months, some are 6 years, literally. The bottom line is that if your children are there, they are watching, they are absorbing, they are sponges. And they see how people go through things. And if you do it with, you know, integrity and honesty, it's an enormous plus for your children to see something like that. And at the end of the day,
and for you,
I was going to say, at the end of the day, that's exactly who I believe you want to be, right? You want to be somebody with integrity and somebody who is upright and doing the right thing. So I think,
well, and you want to be post-decree with no regrets. You don't want to regret things that you did in the heat of a moment, right? That is sort of, it's like some of those, and there's lots of little techniques that we teach for sort of helping those moments of sort of, let's say you're leaving someone who is, some people leave people who are a little bit intense, and the other person is texting and emailing them, and you have to teach people how to treat you. So you might have to say no for the first time. You might have to say, not respond to something straight away for the first time. Those can be really difficult, hard moments, and you can't do them alone. You need support. You need your own therapist. You need a support group, whether it's a Lilac Tree support group or not. You need some kind of support.
And I'm sure you have heard somebody say, how do I find my voice, or something similar, right? I haven't had it for 20 years. I'm not sure how to find it appropriately. You can go from one extreme to another. That's not so helpful either. So I think all of these are just so important. We do need to take a break. Before we do, I'm going to ask, what is a way that if somebody wants to learn more, whether they get in touch with you, learn about Divorce University, the Lilac Tree, and all the services related to what we're speaking about, how can they get in touch with you and reach out?
Yes, I think the best way would be to visit our website at thelilactree.org, because everything is on the website. So you can find our phone number on there, you can find our email, you can contact us, and you can see all the programs. And one of the best ways to keep up to date with what we're doing is to sign up to our email list through the website, and then you'll get the most current pieces that are going on. But everything is on there. All our programs are on there, and our online classes are there as well. So you could do the website is the best.
Fantastic. We're going to take a 2-minute break. We will be back. Don't go anywhere. Hello and welcome back to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am Hirsch Serman, your host, and we have Lorraine Murphy, the Executive Director of the Lilac Tree, with us today, and we were discussing a bunch of different things, but ultimately we're going to focus on Divorce University and getting educated, which is so important. Just some of the things, if I can read my handwriting, that we have covered. The first thing is just a reminder that tax season is around the corner. Start to prepare, get organized, and watch out for all those documents. But we spoke a little bit about some of those do's and don'ts and getting ready and thinking through, and don't rush out and I guess really be impulsive in just hiring somebody and moving, but really planning ahead of time so that you hire the right people, which is so important. We spoke a little bit about kind of awareness, what is your divorce going to look like? How do you make it amicable? Are all things that play into that. Getting ready for divorce, the resources and what you offer through the Lilac Tree, which is just a tremendous amount, considering there's a handful of you and the amount of people that call and what you go through. It's unbelievable. I'm always blown away by that.
We are small but mighty.
There we go. That's exactly right. We spoke a little bit about focusing on creating and being in a healthy emotional state and the integrity and maintaining your integrity and being a role model, finding out and really figuring out your priorities, the things that have to happen post-decree. But one thing I also think we touched on sort of about knowing responsibilities that I think becomes a very important piece as well is when you hire somebody, it doesn't mean that they are now responsible for your outcome. You are still responsible. for example, I have more than one client, right? Attorneys can have as well. You know, you can have 20 or 30 clients at a time.
Yes.
So it doesn't mean, you know, that you can just sit back and say everything's cool, you know. So
Yes,
just a heads up for people.
Well, and I think that's the piece, right? The more you know about the process and the way sort of even just how civil proceedings work, just having the knowledge of that. You don't have that at the beginning of the process. Nobody, you know, unless you're a divorce lawyer, you don't really know how divorce works.
Right,
and
exactly. And
right,
you
why
know,
would you? Right? Why would you? And
I will tell you, I do, no, 100%. There's, you know, I know my area. I'm not a legal person. I know I've learned a lot about the legal side, but I'm still not a pro at the legal side, right? You know, you really do need that right individual. And with all that's going on, you know, I think people really kind of need to understand. I do have a blog on my website about how to interview a divorce attorney. And it applies to someone like myself, the finance side, whomever you're dealing with, the financial divorce coach, anyone like that. And I have had people say, you know, I never thought about, you know, whatever bullet point I've got on there. And it does become a very, very important piece, because are they aligned? Are they, you know, they do 90% of their work in the courtroom, but you don't want to go to court. You want to avoid that. That might not be the right, you know, attorney for you, you know, so all the kind of things that you might need to think through.
I mean, I think that's one of the things too. I think the statistic out there, and I'm sort of not quoting from anywhere exact, but approximately about 3% of cases end up in trial or in court, as we say. You know, the paperwork going to court is different than sort of ending up in a trial. And most cases are not going to go to trial, and you don't really want that. This is not your LA law moment, you know?
Yes.
And so, you know, you definitely want to sort of, you know, and that one of the things I wanted to add too is that in order to get divorced, you need a great deal of flexibility and adaptability. Yes, you might have some goals in the beginning. When you begin the process, you're in a very different place than where you are 6 months or a year down the line. The average divorce takes 1 to 2 years. And that is not because of you, it's because of just the process and the judges' calendars and the lawyers' calendars and just different pieces that you have to gather and it just time. But that, when you want to get divorced, a year sounds like an eternity. You must pace yourself for this process. It is not easy, and there will be challenges that come up along the way, and you have to have the right team for yourself already, whether that's a therapist, a coach, a divorce coach, a financial person, a lawyer, you know, a legal professional, support group, anything that your team that you have when those challenges come up, because there will be some. Whether you are the person who initiates the divorce and you think you've planned everything out, it never goes quite to plan, does it?
No, it's so true. And, you know, one of the things I do with my clients, I have a worksheet that we go through. It's one usually about a session. And we try to identify as many priorities that they have as possible. And yes, most of them are financial from my perspective, but I talk about things like I've dealt with, you know, religious families, and one has, you know, kind of dissipated in their observance. And so they don't care about the religious education at a day school or, you know, parochial school kind of thing. How does that play in? Because you now have decisions to make. But it's important not just to identify yours, but to try to think about what is important to your spouse. Because now you know a lot of where those hard conversations are going to be if you both want the same thing. Or maybe you know what to use to get more of what you want, right? So planning and thinking it through, and these are some of the things that become so important in order to. I would also say communication is enormous. Just because somebody, you know, I deal with divorce or an attorney deals with divorce doesn't mean I know what you want out of your divorce. So these conversations and thoughts and communicating, I think, become a very, very important piece.
And those, I think a lot of the classes that we have, and also our sessions as well, are where we can help teach people how to interview somebody, a divorce professional, or how, you know, we do a lot, you know, where someone isn't they've hired an attorney. They felt good about hiring that attorney, but now things aren't quite going right, but they're not sure.
Right.
And then if they call us, we can we're not lawyers. We don't give legal advice, but sometimes we can listen to what's going on, and we can say, okay, that's totally normal. Calm down.
They don't usually get back to you in 3 hours.
No, and I always tell people something, if you have a lawyer that is in doing one of those trials, those odd trials, and we often have, attorneys who prepare for trial, and then the case is settled on the steps of the trial. That is very common in the divorce arena. It's very sort of, gamesmanship a little bit in that way sometimes. And so when they do that, they are all in for that client that they're focused on.
Right.
And that means if your case is just starting and you've got a status hearing, or, to that, you have to understand that they're juggling 50 clients or how many clients they're juggling. And so, sometimes you just need sort of a reality check by talking to someone else who knows what's going on. And that's good too.
we did touch on the whole court thing, and I think this is something that is also important. I've been deposed as an example, as an expert witness, and that case never went to trial. But you'd think, they deposed everybody. They, trials 2 weeks later, it gets settled. I've even seen where they've gone to court, had a day's worth of court, sit back afterwards and say, look, guys, let's just quickly, try to knock this out now instead of coming back for a whole day, So very often you may start that whole court process or even enter the court, sometimes go beyond those steps, and you still have the ability to settle it without having to go through days and days of a court case. So
and my big advice
be a little bit flexible, be open to that. I think these are things that play in.
Yes. I was going to say, my big advice to your listeners is do not let your case end up heading towards trial. Do not let a judge decide your life. Do not. They don't want to. But judges are human. And so do not have choices that affect the rest of your life or your children's life end up in the hands of a judge to decide on one of many cases they're dealing with that day.
I agree.
Your life, it's so important for you to make choices and you take ownership. Now, sometimes people are dealing with very difficult partners and spouses, and you have no choice. And in that situation, you need, a different kind of team, maybe. You need a little, a strong attorney. You might need to kind of push towards trial, but that's not very often. So mostly don't let it happen.
The one thing I do want to point out with that as well is a lot of people think the law says this. So if we go to a judge, this will be the outcome, and judges are people and they do try to compromise and they try to take other things into account. And quite honestly, they have their own biases that they come with. And, you're in Cook County, and if I remember correctly, there are 3 full-time family law judges, if I remember correctly, in Cook County. You may not get the same outcome it's the exact trial in front of each one of those may not have the exact same outcome.
Yeah, we always have that phrase of sort of, if you put your same case in front of 5 judges, you'll get 5 different answers.
Correct.
So, if you want to roll the dice that way and do that, that's okay, but probably don't do that. I think this is the thing too, it's good to have perspective when you're going through this process. Like, by hiring a good attorney or a good divorce professional or a good mediator, they will really guide you the right way. You want to hire someone who will tell you when you're in the wrong and when you're kind of asking for crazy stuff.
Right.
You want someone who will tell you that. You don't want someone who will just do what you say. That is not what you want. Really hiring well from the beginning, really getting prepared from the beginning, really setting your mind and planning yourself is really key to this process and succeeding in it.
It is. And I always would recommend, I know plenty of mediators through the Lilac tree, but, the one thing that is so important is understand what mediation is. And mediation is not the mediator finding a solution, right? And that's what something I'm actually a qualified certified mediator. And the thing that really blew me away when I walked into the training was their role is to facilitate a healthy discussion, helping you create a solution. It's not for them to.
Right.
So before we go down another road, I do want to start focusing on Lilac Tree
Sure,
on York
sure.
University. We don't have too much time left.
Sure,
So,
absolutely.
I mean, as you pointed out, and you know, I've said before that you guys, the Lilac Tree, has an amazing resources through the year, through classes and everything else. But in basically exactly 3 weeks or just under, really, you have Divorce University. As I said, it's the 40th.
40th, I know, 40th.
That you put on.
Mm-hmm.
Much of what we've spoken about are some of the things that are going to be covered there, whether it's the judges, the attorneys, the financial, the emotional, all of these things are topics that are covered there. So I encourage everybody to go to the lilactree.org. I think that's a good start. But can you give us an overview of the event and some of the things that people, are going to see there?
Yeah. So like you mentioned before, last year was our first time. We've done Divorce University for many years. We're really good at what we do with this conference. But last year was the first year we transitioned it into a virtual format. And it worked really well. We were very pleased, and the clients that attended were very pleased. So we're replicating it again in a virtual format. So it is a 2-day conference, live, virtual, with different, and what we sort of say is it's sort of like Lilac Tree rolled into one big event, all the pieces of Lilac Tree. So what we're trying to give you is every single thing we think you need to really start off the process well for yourself. And so we have different panels. We have a big legal panel, which will have some judges on. We have financial panels that will have different topics. We call it divorce math. That's divorce math is one of our headings that we use a lot of classes under. And then you will also have other classes that talk about different pieces of the process. And so if you have children, you could attend the ones that relate to children. What is a GAL? What is a child rep? What is all about child support? You can attend those different programs if you want. Or if you're divorcing later in life, you can attend different pieces that are more important to you there. So you can pick and choose what pieces you attend. I would definitely attend all the pieces with judges.
Yes.
Because those are phenomenal always. I love the judges. They come, they openly talk. It's really great to hear from them. And they give you a really different perspective from the bench that we don't often get to hear. When you're going through divorce, you don't really go and have a chat with the judge.
I was going to say,
really something that happens.
This may be about the only kind of format or medium in which you actually get to hear judges talk about it. It really is a very unique piece of
very
this.
unique. Yes.
The multidiscipline that you talked about, the seeing and the perspective from all these professionals, all of these, I think, are enormously important for people to understand, especially going, if you're contemplating. One of the things I like about it being online is that sometimes you're contemplating or you don't really want anyone to know you're thinking or in the process. You can attend without anybody knowing. You don't have to put your name, you don't have to put your camera on, you don't need, so you can really attend this kind of incognito, if I can call it that. Which I think maybe sometimes people didn't attend the in-person because they were scared maybe who they would run into or what people would see, things like that. So,
and we serve all people. So regardless of gender identity. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. We have a lot of programs that are specifically for women because we were serving only women for many, many years, but we have, we'd love to have other programs as well. So let us know. We're always open to ideas as well. But the Divorce University, you're exactly right. People can register. They can change their own profile and they could just register with a fake name or their initials. We don't care. And then they can just roam around the conference in a virtual format way and ask questions here and there. And nobody has any idea who they are. And they get the information they need, and that would be great.
Last year, I actually had a client who was prospective or contemplating, should I say, attended both of the sessions I was involved in. I didn't even know because she told me afterwards. She said, "Oh, by the way, I thought you were really good on this and this topic." I was like, "I didn't see it." She's like, "No, I was this and this initial. I don't remember what." So
yes. I mean,
that
I
was
think
something I knew. I didn't even know. was going to be there. So we do
Yeah.
got to start wrapping up. I wish we had another
Sorry.
hour to talk about all of this because there is tremendous amount. How can somebody register for Divorce University?
Yes, so the registration will be open very soon. So you can either visit our website and it'll be open very, very soon, but or you can sign up to the email list, and then when it's open, we'll be blasting out a registration notice that it's open. So either way you can do that, but very soon it'll be open. But
So,
it is
I'm
a
going to
really
make a
great,
suggestion for people is it's the lilactree.org.
Yep.
Go on there. You will see Divorce University on the top in the kind of like the chevron with the tabs.
Yeah.
It at least gives you an overview so you can start to learn a little bit more. But I would say look at some of the other resources on the website. There's, it's not just a website for Divorce University. It's with the other offerings and who the Lilac Tree is, which I think I encourage everybody, no matter where you are, to get familiar with it and to be able to, just start to absorb some of the things that they offer, because there are so many of them. So I'm going to ask you, we do have to wrap up, as I said, any last thoughts on whether preparing for divorce, attending Divorce University, or anything? What are some parting thoughts?
Well, I think that sort of, give yourself a little compassion, whether you are the person deciding or you are the person being told that you're getting divorced or separated. Give yourself a little space. And, sometimes, I mean, especially if you have children, we know that children are very adaptive. It is how you go through the process that defines how they go through the process. Right. So that is one of the keys, is sort of the more prepared and organized you are and supported. And we know it's painful. We know some of you might be scared to leave different situations. There is support. There is help out there. If you're unsure where to go or where to call us, and we'll try and help you figure out where you can go.
I like that. And, don't be shy to reach out. They are wonderful. They are welcoming, and they really know what to do and how to help people, and have a myriad of referrals if you need somebody to help. So I appreciate all of that. I appreciate all that you guys do. You know that. I hope you do. But I really do. I think you and the team do an incredible job, not just on Divorce University, but throughout the entire year. So I do appreciate it.
We appreciate that.
You can reach out to Lorraine or anyone else on the team at the lilactree.org, and I encourage you to do so. And Lorraine, thank you for sharing all that you have. It's not an easy topic to cover in 40 minutes, and I think you've given some teaser information, but I think you've given a breadth of information for people to really think about before they move, and I think that's a very important piece, because this is not something that you want to do glibly or on the fly. You kind of only get one chance at it, so prepare for it and do it as best as you can. I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. I want you to have a wonderful week, a wonderful year, and I want to thank Lorraine for joining us, CC Schatz, my producer, for making everything happen and make it so easy to have these conversations. And you can reach out to me on my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. Look forward to everybody joining me. We have a show next week with Rosalind Sadaka, and we are going to talk about child-centered divorce. This is Child-Centered Divorce Month, and I hope you will join me next week. Thank you so much.